Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are talking about discipline or disparity, and we want to rethink school discipline. We want to focus on race and gender equity. My name is Dr. Mishkat Al Moumin. Oftentimes, people call me Dr. A. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am your brand ambassador with Quarantine Racism. And again, we are here today to think about or actually rethink discipline in our schools. We want to inspire and empower the next generation of leaders. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Let's see when discipline becomes disparity and why. So, first of all, I want us to think of discipline beyond suspension and detention or going to the principal's office. It includes subtle and daily interaction that signals something to those who are at the end of the stick, so to speak. Just to give you a couple of examples, body language. When I taught at the Defense Language Institute, I had a student who was attending the study hall, which is an opportunity offered to students to work after classes on their homework. And at the time, the department chair entered the class to check on me and the students. After she left, and when a student got hold of me privately, she told me that the way the chairperson looked at her discouraged her dramatically. Her words were, "She looks at me in such a way that I'm not gonna make it." I'm saying, or I'm sharing this story to tell you that oftentimes, the way we engage with the students, it becomes some form of disciplinary messaging. And we want to be aware of that. So, part of this engagement with you today is to raise your awareness to these opportunities or these encounters because the students pick up on them. I want us also to look at grading practices. And I'm going to share with you a story from my background in Iraq. When I joined the law school, during my first day, the first lecture, the professor enters and asks all women to leave the classroom and go to nursing schools where they belong. Those who studied, those who studied and worked hard, and I was among them. As, as a woman, I always received a lesser grade than my fellow, male students. How do I know? Um, I continued my study, and students, as you know, share. Oftentimes, I got the opportunity to look at what my, male counterpart wrote, or, the way they respond to questions and how they, structure the answer. And you can immediately see the difference. And I can give you an example from the oral exam that I went through. I was asked to respond to a scenario where the United Nations engaged in drug dealing and how should we resolve that. My male counterpart was asked, where is the headquarters of the UN? From there, you can see the difference in the type of questions and the type of grading. Classroom interaction. Not only just ignoring raised hands or ignoring questions or downplaying them, but the way you break down the problem, the way you provide scaffolding. All of these engagements reflect on the student. Believe it or not, during the recess or when the students are engaging with each other, they are going to mimic these behaviors. The feedback tone, the way you offer the feedback to X student, different from Y student. So, and I'm going to share another example from my tenure at the Defense Language Institute. Because we taught in small classes, oftentimes the student who was perceived as hardworking or active in the classroom, their input to or contribution to class discussion was more valuable than those who were struggling. Whether the teacher noticed it or not, that's totally different, scenario. Through their feedback, I get to experience that as a department chair because I see the feedback, for the entire teaching team, and students give constructive feedback on how the classes and the discussions were conducted. Now, why this matters? Because disciplinary disparities in schools mirror the employment system, for example. So that's another hurdle that the student has to overcome or deal with. For example, if their parents are struggling with their employment and they bring it back home or discuss it in front of the student, that's a compound impact. That's a traumatizing experience. The student would think it's not only me, it's my parents, it's my community, it's a broader issue. And they would reflect on themselves to think they are the problem, not the class dynamic. The other thing that I'd like us to think about is to examine our structural bias early on. So rather than waiting for the problem to grow and to get more complicated, we want to get ahead of it. Even though in the presentation I will share with you more strategies to get ahead of it. But one way of getting ahead of it is to collect feedback from the student regularly. I used to make it a habit in my classroom to stop early on, just to ask students about their feedback. What do they have for me? Am I helping them learn? Are they achieving their academic goals? What do they need more from me to achieve these academic goals? What they would like to see less from me? And believe it or not, even when I became a department chair, a managing academic director, and an executive director, I used to give my employees questions, and I would give them the hard copy. So as they would write, the answers by hand, and give me the feedback anonymously. They would put it in my mailbox, so I don't know who answered which question. Sometimes, when I send a survey via email, there is this fear that somehow their information will be transmitted to me. So I prefer the hard copy. And I would read them thoroughly. They would experience change in my behavior if they offered me constructive feedback. And I would simply ask, what are the three things that you'd like to see more of when it comes to my interaction with you? And what are the three things that you would like to see less from me when we interact with each other? The other thing that I would like to touch on is that schools have the power to reinforce positive behavior, to change careers and change perspectives altogether. Now, the school may think to itself they don't have the power, they don't have the fund, they don't have what they need, but we will talk about that within the presentation. But for now, I'd like to assure you that there are so many grants out there waiting for you to apply for. And I'll be more than happy to help you write these grants. Just last year, I won $46,000 for educational programs. I written every single grant of those. So you are not alone. There is help, and together we can provide the needed resources or work on making it available. Now, let's see who gets disciplined and how often. Black students are disciplined 3 times more than white students. And this is according to the Department of Education, and this is their findings in 2021. We are here to explore how can we help our students? How can we get ahead of the problem versus keeping it, uh, festering and growing, rather than guiding our students to success. So those numbers are here just to kind of solidify and present some statistics to you. Black girls are more likely to be labeled as loud or defiant. If you recall the story I shared with you earlier about the department chair popping her head into my classroom to check on me and my student. The student in that scenario, she was a Black student. And she immediately picked on, this uh, behavior. I assure you the chairperson did not mean anything. However, this, implicit bias, it finds its way to harm the victim, so to speak. LGBTQ plus students, whether they are, experiencing issues because of their orientation, or it's a compound issue because of the color of their skins, it's, they are at a greater risk of being expelled from school. We can't forget students with disabilities, and oftentimes they are expelled from school due to a behavior related to their disabilities. And again, my objective here is not to bring my own views to the mix, but to share with you some reliable studies and statistics so as we can, make an informed decision and, adopt a strategy that helps our classes and our students as well. When disparities are compounded by race or gender, um, you know, the identity of the student becomes questionable. And I'd like to share with you my own personal story. As I mentioned before, I studied law in Iraq, and the legal profession continues to be male dominated, and that is reflected in schools and how classes are conducted. Just to give you an example, rape as a crime was always skipped. Divorce, when it was taught, there was mockery and laughter. and jokes, inappropriate jokes, that the man get to take everything, to the limit that as a female student, I had to kind of redirect the classroom to say, let's imagine that the woman in this case study is your sister, your daughter, your cousin. Would you be saying these things about her? Would you be laughing at her demise, that she lost everything and didn't get a dime out of this divorce? In the process, I felt I had to prove myself every step of the way. Not only because, I used to get or the unsolvable case study, but I felt I didn't belong. Similarly, in your classroom, if there is student who their identity is being questioned, they feel they don't fit, they don't belong. On top of it, they try to maybe convey the message to you. Discipline is the answer, not listening. So that when, discipline gets to be compounded by an underlying issue, whether it's race or gender, it will impact the academic outcomes, the learning journey of the student. And again, the issue here is for us to think about the compounded impact on the student. And as I mentioned before, if the family where that student is growing up experiencing similar issues, so that's the discussion they have around the dining table, then that's even more impacting. It becomes traumatizing. When I studied in Iraq, I always was very careful what to say, what to wear, where to sit, how to conduct myself. I was under the impression that everyone is watching me, not because I was paranoid, but because my colleagues made it clear to me. Oftentimes classes were, like run in a way that a student get to comment on whatever he wants, and comments were directed towards, the 10 female students who were, challenging, so to speak, the norm, and trying to find their way in a male dominated, um, profession or classroom. Again, that compounded impact can change the academic outcome. For me, I continued my study because I felt, I had something to contribute to the profession. I came second on my class because the first has to be or had to be a man. But nevertheless, I continued my graduate studies and I graduated. I end up working, in the same school that continued to reject me. But I wanted to share with you, this evening, the impact of, these dynamics altogether. When you have zero tolerance, that when start that's when you start to see the impact on students of color. If your reaction, as an administration, as a school administration, to student misbehavior, even minor things, is to expel them, to give them detention, that's when you start seeing the problem growing and being, its impact kind of um, make it difficult for the student to pursue their academic dream. I'd like to share another story that happened to me studying in Iraq. I write with my left hand. I do everything else with my right hand, including erasing my mistakes. And during my first day at elementary school, I noticed the teacher start, approaching me. I was seated at the end of the class due to my height. And the teacher had this menacing look in her eyes. I still recall it until today. And she approached me and she immediately slapped me on my face. I didn't know what was going on. The first thing that came to my mind was I solved the problem wrong. Even though I practiced it at home, it was a math class. But then she said, "Don't write with your evil hand." At this, at that age, I didn't know what was the evil hand. What is she talking about? And to be honest with you, I couldn't learn anything, during that day. And my relationship with math was always complicated, but everything was resolved after I joined Harvard, and Professor Hughes taught me math, if I can say, the right way. um, you see, that's zero tolerance. First of all, the reaction was to hit the student, that looked different. I knew I looked different. My father was Iraqi, my mom was Lebanese. I had different features. There were other students writing with their left hand, but they didn't get hit. You see, as a student, even though I was a child, I immediately noticed that there were other students doing the same thing, but they were not hit. Um, as I told you, her behavior, the teacher's behavior, impacted my relationship with math. I always had some anxiety around math. I didn't like the topic. I even veered, towards law and studying law because it's humanity. There are no mathematical equations involved, so to speak. But again, the underlying cause was the teacher's implicit bias. She noticed I was different, so that's why she approached me first. Somehow, I believe that was the issue in her mind. If she would get me to change, then the rest of the class would change, even though that's not true. But that was what's going on in her mind. She attacked immediately the student who looked different. I want us to look beyond the suspension notice. Disciplinary issues damage the academic success of the student and it impact their self-worth. I'd like to bring another example from my tenure at the Defense Language Institute. Um, you know, Teachers and faculty members, they have the opportunity to discipline the student, and most of our students were and still are service members. So if you discipline them, you have to put it in writing and it will stay in their records and it will impact, their promotion. To be honest with you, I have seen this power misused. Oftentimes, students were disciplined, based on a subjective approach, not objective issue that took place. So The first thing I did as a chairperson was to train faculty members how to conduct and when to conduct disciplinary counseling. I also trained them how to issue a warning. So before disciplining the student, before going all the way with discipline, we could issue a warning. And we oftentimes call it an advisory counseling. I noticed you are doing X in the classroom. You are a hardworking student, if they are, or you come to class every day. I haven't seen that issue from you before. How come it's taking place now? Next class, please do XYZ. Oftentimes, before the training, I used to see disciplinary counselings where a student would say, or where when you read, you did this, you did that, you were unpolite. It's not a matter of attacking the student, it's a matter of explaining to the student how their behavior in class, impacted the academic process or impacted class processes, learning outcomes. At the same time, I had students coming to my classroom or to my office saying that the teacher threatened them with counseling. And if they proceed, the student would file an EEO case, which they had every right to do. But I'm sharing this story with you to bring forth the dynamic. You see, the dynamic was all about threatening because there was zero tolerance to student behavior no matter what. And student would share with me they are concerned, they don't know if they can move around in the classroom, they don't know if they can ask questions. And so many times, these issues were discussed even at a higher level. Student would approach the dean, student would file complaints with EEO. It's not a matter about of what behavior took place, is but what led to the behavior, what happened before that resulted in such behavior. Next, we need to think about that when we drop students from classes, when we suspend them, then most likely they will enter the criminal justice system. And, as educators, as people who are passionate about learning, that's the last thing you would want. And again, in my case, when I taught at the Defense Language Institute, later on, I worked as a student learning specialist. And I would always, meet with teachers, meet with, sergeants and unit leaders to help students, put their career back on track. I even established the early intervention board. So, I would monitor the grades when I see, student grade start to drop. I will convene the intervention board to give student resources, not to reprimand them or, complete a process that leads to their disenrollment. So, allowing the student every opportunity possible to meet their academic goals and graduate, that's the objective of this presentation. Second or third, I want us to kind of put ourselves in the students' shoes. Again, students will think that they are the problem. There must be something wrong with them. And that's why they are being subjected to these punishments and disciplinary processes. It's not their circumstances. So, the continuous process of disciplining a student, especially if it keeps occurring, if it happens left and right, then it signals to the student that they are the problem. They are not worthy of being in the classroom, and most likely they will be dropped, um, out of the classroom or out of the academic environment. So, that's why I want us to rethink how we discipline our students. When I started working on this presentation, um, my Black student that I shared her experience with you, she was struggling. She graduated later on. She was a hardworking student, but there was a struggle. It won't be fair to her story not to mention that. But she was really hardworking, dedicated. She had really a positive attitude towards learning and um, acquiring a second language, so to speak. So, Black students, oftentimes, Black, girls, oftentimes, get punished or get disciplined without clear violation of rules or, something wrong that took place. It's the perception that their tone, their posture, or their attitude is inappropriate. And again, the emphasis here is that there's no clear violation. There's no clear cut that they did something wrong. The other thing that I will keep, coming back to is passing judgment. And I'd like to share another story with you from my tenure at the Defense Language Institute. Oftentimes, we would give students daily homework, and the daily homework is not to be taken lightly. Usually, it takes a student an average of 2 hours to complete the homework. It includes complicated sections, and it aimed at assessing the student, so to speak. In every modality, we had four modality: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. When a student doesn't turn their homework to the teacher, they don't turn it over to the teacher, technically speaking, they should be disciplined, meaning you should issue a disciplinary counseling saying that student did not, provide the homework, not submit any homework. What usually happens is that the struggling student would get the disciplinary counseling, but the student who's active in the classroom or who secured good grades won't get it. In the teacher's mind, they are giving the hardworking student, so to speak, a bit of leniency. It's not their behavior, it's out of character for them. So that's why they are not disciplining them. The thing that the teacher did not know at the time, students talk to each other. So the hardworking student would brag about not being disciplined, while the struggling student is being, harshly disciplined. As a department chair, I would read all that in the student feedback, saying there is favoritism in how classes are conducted. So, I will share with you later through the presentation, how I approached this issue as an administrator and what type of processes I enacted, in addition to training faculty members on how to conduct disciplinary counseling. Um, One of the alternatives to discipline the student or punishing them is to build a rapport with them. Once you have a relationship with your student, you got to know them and understand where they are coming from. And most importantly, you allow them to express themselves and their identity safely in the classroom. Then you would see less disciplinary issues. Sometimes I think of behavioral issues as a message. The student is trying to tell you, hey, teacher, there is something wrong here, but they don't know how to express themselves. So they either shut down, withdraw from the class, or act out. As a teacher, as an educator, your job is to approach it with empathy. Empathy does not mean lack of accountability. In fact, empathy encourages accountability. One way of, holding students accountable is to tell them upfront what you expect with them, which is one of the strategies that, I worked with my teams to implement. So from the first day, I would tell students, and at the beginning, the teaching team asked me to deliver the message, to the students on their first day. They told me that they want to see how it's done. So the way I approached the students, I ask them, because it's a language classroom, they have their laptops with them. And oftentimes, if a teacher would lecture at them, they would engage in, other things. They go to, Facebook, they engage in social media and things to that effect, rather than, paying attention to the classes. Excuse me. The way I, approached the students at the time, I asked them, is it okay for us as learners to check Facebook if classes are being conducted? And every single student said no. I said, and then I asked them, if it happened, what should we do as learners, as a community of learners? What should we do? And together we came up with a strategy. Similarly, after they explained what should have happened, we wrote it down. It became a contract. We signed it together. The teachers felt, comfortable going to the classroom without that burden that what should I do if a student is not paying attention. The student also knew ahead of time what to expect if they did, or if they behaved in such a manner. Moreover, I used to have, regular meetings with class leaders who are students, but because of their ranks, they would lead the class, just to check and see what's going on with the classroom. Do they need anything? Do they have the resources? What else would they like to see as learners? To me, relationships continue to be essential, not optional. If you want your class to go smoothly, you have to build a relationship with your students and, keep feeding that relationship. It's not just about, going to the class, smiling and asking everyone how are they doing. It's a matter of listening, and listening actively, meaning they need to see change after they express a concern to you. It's a matter of mutual respect, you know, They respect you, you also respect them. It's a matter also of, creating a safe environment. A student can talk and express themselves to you in your classroom, in your office, without the fear of being judged. So the judgment is the issue before, um, you know, or it's the phase before discipline would take place. What's There are many things that schools can address. One of them is to eliminate the zero tolerance policy, training teachers on implicit bias and trauma informed practices. And I have to tell you, trauma informed practices plays a big role. When you see a student acting out, perhaps it's because they are traumatized, not because they are misbehaving. And I had a lot of experience with that, not only because I taught students who were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, but because I experienced it myself. I experienced war. I know how it feels when you hear explosions, when you see, I'm not gonna, describe it, but when you see people, in the street hurt or killed, and how that impact your learning. What does that mean for you as a learner? It doesn't mean that just because you are sitting in the classroom, you won't recall these events or these events won't be triggered. All it means that as a learner, you hope that your educator would understand um, what you went through and use it as an opportunity to strengthen the learning outcome, to hone your skills, and help you use these experiences as learning moments rather than being traumatized by them. Restorative justice is, you know, a great opportunity for educators to reflect on and use it to rethink discipline. Restorative justice, as you probably know, it's not about punishment. It's about restoring the situation to what was before the action. And again, it can start from a commitment to change. It can start from a discussion around expectations, and it can start from an apology or taking an action, to demonstrate repentance, so to speak. But it has more impact, more positive impact on both the learner and the community than punishment. When you punish the student, nothing gets resolved. The only thing that takes place is, you know, hurting the student and damaging their academic career. But restorative justice, it addresses, the negative impact that took place due to the student behavior. It also raises the student awareness that their behavior is either not acceptable or damaging. Um, Create a safe space for students' voice is very important. It's essential. So, assigning time where you listen to a student and act on their feedback. You see, I have seen so many faculty members. They listen, they nod, and nothing gets changed. I have seen another behavior from faculty members. Um, they want to show that they empathize with one student, they end up favoring them. I used to have a faculty member who would say, who would ask a question and then every student would answer. But in his mind, he was trying to help the struggling student. So he would say, no, wait a minute. I want to see what X would say. Their opinion mattered the most. To the rest of the class, they felt their contribution, which was accurate, more elaborative, was less appreciated. And they reflected that in their feedback to the teacher. So, creating that safe environment where each student would feel valued without the need for a teacher to, go out of their way to acknowledge one student over the rest of the class. I have seen other behavior. Usually, teachers would bring, food and dessert next day after reprimanding the entire class. And oftentimes, while students would, eat the food or save it for later, in their feedback, they would say the teacher was trying to buy them out. So these, behavior, this type of kind of going out of your way to try to make the situation better would oftentimes backfire on the teacher. But if we create a safe space, a student can say what's on their mind, and they are sure that, first of all, you would respect their feedback. Second of all, a change would take place. Then you won't need to go out of your way to try to make the classroom dynamic more accommodating or more friendly. Oftentimes, I get asked this question. So, what can I do while waiting for policies to be amended or created? Excuse me. And my answer will always be the same: start from your own classroom. You don't need to wait for the school district to reform or change the policy. You can simply have an open discussion with clear, equitable, standards and expectation. This is what I'm expecting from you guys. And then immediately follow up with a question: what should take place if X happen? Give them agency to say what they would like the outcome, the consequences to be when something happens. And something will happen. I haven't seen the perfect classroom where all the students are well behaved and the teacher, provide excellent scaffolding and breakdown of problems and everything goes as expected. And I'm sure you haven't either. But what we can do is to have this open communication style and hold people accountable after we tell them what do we expect from them. Make sure that relationships are the center of your communication with the student, not punishment. That's the most important part. You have to build this rapport with your students. I always make it a habit to thank my mentees, my students, when I mentor them, and I always tell them I'm your mentor. I'm not your just your teacher. During the second and the third semester, I would always tell them, now you are a linguist, just like me. And so many times they would say, Professor, we haven't graduated yet. And I say, you will graduate. And even though you are learning, I perceive you to be a linguist from now moving forward. Use restorative language. The language that is not meant to punish. The language is meant to restore, to address the damage that took place, and help students reflect and change their behavior. I disciplined student. I took corrective action, but my objective was always the learning outcome, not only for the student himself, but also for the classroom as well. Um, Oftentimes, teaching, and this is a story that I went through, teaching after lunch is challenging. Students have just ate their lunch, they feel sleepy. Keep in mind, they wake up early hours because of their military duties. So after lunch is always challenging. And again, I always tell them, here's what I'm expecting from you. Here's what I want from you. Here's my part. Here's what I'm going to do for you. And I had a student who oftentimes would sleep. You would, I would see him dozing off, so to speak. And, I explained a concept for him, and he clarified that he understood it. Then, when I asked him a question about it, he was falling to sleep again. I asked him to do 10 push ups in the classroom while, you know, uh, giving me the information that I provided back to him. My issue was not only that he was not responding, is that he was imitating a behavior that was damaging to his colleagues. So I couldn't, for example, pair him up with another student. That was an issue because he would be, sleepy. He wouldn't respond or engage with his colleague. I couldn't keep interrupting the class, going back and ask him question and deprive another student from the opportunity of learning and speaking the language. So restorative language, restorative practices are the ones needed in the classroom. Document the practices and share them with the class. So oftentimes, when I take a corrective action, I would, take some time to discuss with the classroom, to reflect on it. Is this something they would like to see more of? Is this something they would like to see less of? What's the way ahead? And again, change begins at, the classroom level. And you can use that opportunity to come up with a standard for your class, and set expectations for your students and for yourself as well, so as you can measure success. We have a couple of courses here at Quarantine Racism. And the standard course is approved in, 6 states. It's a nationwide, standard course, and we can offer it at $297. And its objective is to promote positive racial teacher-student relationship. So it will help you build that rapport, build that relationship with your students. We have an executive track, and basically the teacher will be certified to offer the course. So it's very well suited for principals, associated principal, or assistant principals, excuse me, any teacher who would like to teach the course to fellow teachers, so to speak, and we offer it at $497. If you'd like to learn more about these courses, all you have to do is to go to quarantineracism.com slash and question mark ref equals Mishkat, which is my first name. But oftentimes, the other question that I get from teachers is, where do I pay? How can I pay for this class? How can I afford it? And here's what I would like to share with you. There are many foundations out there that would offer funding to schools. These are just examples. There's a long list of foundations, donors who would, provide funding. And the language of success, my business, will be happy to help you write a grant and apply and receive funding and achieve your school's goals, your personal goals. And, this way you can put your career on a track, your career on a success track. Your school will be well equipped to handle these issues, whether you want to implement, restorative justice practices, review policies, or write them. The opportunity is available for you. Reframe, rethink, rebuild, which is the call for action for today. What I want you to think about when you kind of reflect on disciplinary issues is, are you preserving the dignity of the student? Can the same student show up in the classroom next day without being mocked, without being shunned, without being ridiculed for what happened yesterday and how they were disciplined? So treating students with dignity is the key here. These patrons, the same pattern of disciplining a student, of ridiculing them or punishing them, whatever you want to call it, finds its way to workplaces. So the reason I founded the Communication of Success was so many faculty members would come to me asking for advice how to respond to their supervisors who were mistreating them. The supervisor was either micromanaging them or writing a letter of reprimand or treating them differently, and they didn't know how to address these issues. If you would like to learn more about this topic, you can go to YouTube and look up the Communication of Success channel. There are so many short videos addressing issues like favoritism in the workplace, bullying, or even how to work with people who don't like you. These videos aim to give you out-of-the-box solutions. If HR didn't help you, if there are, if the policies for some reason, don't protect you, you have options and you have opportunities. And I hope you would visit my channel, leave a comment, subscribe to it, and help it grow. And again, I'm here. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is at Mishkat Al Moumin. I have more than 18,000 followers. I post articles every Sunday exploring issues related to education, success, and academic growth. You can also visit my channel, The Communication of Success, on YouTube. Feel free to leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, help it grow, and most importantly, tell me what type of a video or issue you would like me to address in my next video. Thank you again for attending. Thank you for being here. And don't hesitate to reach out.